how many national Republican political figures have really made a close study of Reagan, have read his speeches, have pondered how he did it, what lessons he has for us?
Well, I think the number, as Buckley used to say, asymptotically approaches zero. I mean, as a general matter, I think Republicans tend to take political rhetoric not as seriously as they should.
So, Steve, you titled your book "The Age of Reagan," as we said at the beginning of this interview. The premise of behind that title is really that, like the age of Roosevelt, there's at least a generation, maybe longer than a generation, in which the policies and principles and programs of that president, Roosevelt, now Reagan, dominate the political landscape. Are we still in the age of Reagan? Have we left the age of Reagan behind now for the age of Obama? What sort of longevity do you see for the age of Reagan?
Yeah, I think that's the open question today, and you can adduce an awful lot of reasons to suppose that the age is over or is in the process of being supplanted by the age of Obama. I mean, Bill Clinton, some people say he was the Democrats' Eisenhower, really consolidating Reaganism in certain ways. That's Richard Reeves' point of view about Reagan, is Clinton threw in the towel and signed up to be a Reaganite. He actually did cut capital gains taxes. But here we are under Obama, and you have some things that are really quite extraordinary. Open calls for redistribution of wealth, which Reagan in that era seemed to have killed even within the Democratic Party. Calls for returning to 50s era tax rates that were too high for John F. Kennedy, right? By Nobel Prize winners like Paul Krugman and maybe a presidential candidate, Elizabeth Warren, right? So we thought all that, and then of course we have Obamacare. I remember thinking when Reagan was elected in 1980, well, this is the end of Ted Kennedy's national health care schemes.
Is that right? Yeah.
And it's taken
you
30 years.
You were premature, to say the least.
I was absolutely right. And yet here we are. On the other hand, what you see on the Republican side is everyone declaring that they're a Reagan Republican, everyone who wants to be a leader in the Republican Party. I'm sometimes frustrated that the people who say that have done no homework on Reagan's ideas, and especially his discipline and method, public speaking style, and all the rest. And so I do wish people who would say that would do some homework to prove it, that they're really Reagan Republicans. But it does show you that he is the towering figure for Republicans, I think, along with Lincoln. And that to the extent that Republicans and conservatives are serious, not that they're not serious, but I mean really want to be serious about winning and regaining the initiative in American politics, there is the model that's still worthy of close study and emulation, and I think proves that you can be successful.
But it seems to be honored in the breach more than in the observance, doesn't it? I mean, how many national Republican political figures have really made a close study of Reagan, have read his speeches, have pondered how he did it, what lessons he has for us?
Well, I think the number, as Buckley used to say, asymptotically approaches zero. I mean, as a general matter, I think Republicans tend to take political rhetoric not as seriously as they should. And that may have been true for a long time. There's a reason why we call Reagan the great communicator. It's not just that he was appealing and had a great voice, but we now know that he worked very hard at it, right? He really worked on those speeches and practiced them and thought about what works. And so many, I think it's true of both parties, but Republicans, maybe because I'm harder on my own team, seem to be very deficient at this.
But is that name, the great communicator, also not a bit of a come down? I mean, you don't think of Churchill as a great, great communicator. Right. I mean, it was more important what he said, and that he said it in a way than that. I mean, a communicator is a device on Star Trek.
Right. I mean, yes.
I mean, is that connected to what I was actually going to ask you about, which is one of the differences between the age of Roosevelt and the age of Reagan seems to be the lasting political party realignment that Roosevelt produced for the Democrats. and Reagan never did produce a Republican majority, a governing Republican majority, though he certainly captured the Senate and had tremendous electoral college victories and eventually helped, you might say, inspire Gingrich's successful effort to take back the House.
Right.
So he's had long-range consequences politically, but not exactly electorally or in terms of people becoming lifelong loyal Republicans. I mean, people in
Right.
that generation were directly affected, but what about the follow-on effects, I guess?
Yeah, two things should be said about that. One is Reagan himself said it wasn't that so much that I was a great communicator, is that I communicated great things that were latent in the American people. So I was summoning forth your greatness. He said that thought in many different ways, starting with his first inaugural address and ending with his farewell address. It's a remarkable bookends to what really reflects a certain amount of modesty on his part. That's an unusual thing. You don't think of presidents as being modest people because by definition they're not.
Right.
They can't be, right? The question, I think, of realignment is a trickier one because I think that Reagan happens in the middle of what you might call a de-alignment. You know, it used to be, I'm not sure what the numbers are. You know, David Mayhew, I think, is the guy at Yale who's very
Right.
skeptical of all this.
Right.
And it used to be that 9 out of 10 voters align with one party or the other. Now it's almost half the voters are independents. Now, they often break one way or the other. And I'm not quite sure what to make of all that, but that's been going on at least since the 60s and is accelerating in recent years. And so now I think even very compelling political figures, let me do it this way, thought experiment. If you drop Franklin Roosevelt in today, I'm not sure he can create the kind of realignment that he got in durable partisan terms. And that's, as I say, a complicated subject. And, you know.
Well, you can certainly say Obama has not.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, Obama, who sort of models himself somewhat after FDR and,
Right.
and so forth, and wanted to bring about such a realignment, is still, as his second inaugural shows, pushing the system to the left as much as he can, but he certainly hasn't gotten the electoral response that an FDR got.
Yeah, I can easily envision Obama's, the entire Obama phenomena is proving to be quite evanescent. The second inaugural address really should have been his first inaugural address, right? The first
Right.
one was kind of boring, and so he saved up for the second one, and now he's running into all kinds of trouble.
Well, I don't know. One inaugural would have been enough, I think.
Right, yes.